This here is a fun little take on that classic old fashioned. This week, let me show you how to make a Japanese plum old fashioned. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Matt, I'm the Whiskey Nerd, and like I said, today I've got a fun little twist on a classic old fashioned. I've got an Umeshu old fashioned or a plum old fashioned, and I got the idea for this recipe when myself and my wife Rose reviewed this whiskey right here. I'll put a link to that review up there, but this is the Nikka Session Whisky. It's an international whiskey, what they call in Japan, where they've mixed Japanese whiskey with whiskey from another country and another distillery. So this here is a blend of Nikka whiskey from their Miyagi-kyo and their Yoichi distillery with some from the Ben Nevis Scotch distillery. So it's three different single malts that came together. And when we reviewed it, we thought it had a really nice flavor. It had a really nice malty, biscuity, slightly fruit, slightly bitter kind of flavor to it, but quite nice, quite really interesting and enjoyable. So I wanted a cocktail that wouldn't hide that flavor of the whiskey, and since it's a Japanese whiskey, I wanted to have something that was a bit Japanese in line with it, and that's what I've got right here. This here is plum wine, or as I would say in Japan, Umeshu, which is just like plum alcohol. It's not exactly like a wine, it's almost like a dessert wine. So if you think of like a dessert wine where it's really sweet, almost syrupy, this here is from Choya. It's their silver one, and it's quite like a dessert wine. It's quite syrupy and sweet, but it is not the sweetest one. Like I've had other umeshus that are really, really syrupy, almost like a jelly when you pour it. Really, really syrupy, not obviously like a jelly, but that kind of heaviness. This here is more like a wine. It's quite sweet, but not overpowering, so it's not gonna hide the whiskey. And because it's an old fashioned, always for me, an old fashioned has to have a bit of bitters in it. So I'm gonna use some Angostura classic bitters and some Angostura orange bitters just to kind of round it out, because for me they're like your salt and pepper. You add them to seasoning to everything. They're the nice flavors that round out a cocktail, because at the end of the day, a old fashioned is whiskey, sugar and bitters, and right here we've got our whiskey, we've got our sugar, and we've got our bitters. And because this is like I guess it's called like a liqueur sweetened old fashioned, we're not going to be going in with a small amount. We're going to be going in with a little bit more. We're going to go in with about 60 ml or 2 ounces of our whiskey, about 15 ml or a half an ounce of our umeshu, and then 1 dash each of our bitters to round things out. So that's enough talking about the cocktail. It's time we make it. It's going to be a stirred cocktail. It's going to get a mixing glass, and we're going to pop a nice rock of ice into there before we measure out our ingredients. Starting off with our Nikka Session, not single malt, but malt whiskey. Yeah, it's got this really nice biscuity, almost smoky, but like more herbal character to it. Really, really nice whiskey. Again, if you haven't seen that review, there'll be a link down below which you can check out afterwards. So that there is 60 ml or 2 ounces of our Nikka Session whiskey into there. And then we're going to go in with our umeshu. Like I said, this is quite a sweet one, but not overpoweringly sweet. So I'm going to go in with 15 ml or half an ounce. But if the umeshu you can find is one of those ones that's very sweet, like it's like almost overpowering, you might need to go in with just about 10 ml. So just tailor it to the flavor of your own plum wine that you can find. And like I said, 1 dash each of our orange, 1 dash, and our Angostura classic bitters into there, because that's going to give us a nice kind of contrast to the biscuity sweet malt, the sweetness of that umeshu, and it's going to give us a nice kind of roundness to the cocktail. So I'm going to stir it for about 30 seconds to get it nice and cold. Okay, I think that is nicely chilled now, so I'm going to go right to strain it out into a nice chilled rocks glass. I'm going to put another fresh rock of ice into there before we strain it out, just on top, just to give us a nice kind of clean presentation of our cocktail and to make sure it stays nice and cold while we're drinking it. I have seen some people online, they put like a slice of plum in here to really kind of highlight the fact that it is a plum old fashioned. They go in with that fresh fruit. For me, I never like putting fresh fruit in my cocktails because I feel it overpowers it. It can really highlight the fruity flavor and hide the whiskey. And because I don't want to hide this whiskey, I'm going to go in with just a little dried slice of orange into there, just on the side, just like that. If I can get it to, there we go, fit in. And that right there is how I make an umeshu or a plum Old Fashioned. Now real quick, before I taste this cocktail, if you're new here, scroll down, hit that thumbs up button, hit that like button. I put out cocktail recipes like this featuring whiskey every Friday, and I put out whiskey reviews on, well, whiskeys every Wednesday. So if you want to see those videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know what kind of cocktails you like that use Umeshu, that use that Japanese plum wine, and I might just make more like it in future. But right now, let's taste this cocktail. Cheers. That is really nice. Again, like I said, I wanted the flavour of that whiskey to come through, and it does come through. It comes in at only about 43% alcohol by volume, so it's not super light, it's not down at 40%, but it's also not super strong, it's not super high alcohol, so it could easily get lost in those other flavours with those other, if you used too much bitters or too much of that Umeshu plum wine. But here you get that really nice malty, biscuity, like I said, slightly smoky, slightly herbal character of the whiskey comes through. That's been highlighted by that Umeshu, that's been highlighted by that plum wine to give it a bit of extra sweetness and a little bit of extra roundness. The bitters keep it as like recognizably an old fashioned. They keep it as that classic kind of flavor you'd be expecting, but with that bit of a twist, that bit of a fun little take on that classic old fashioned. If you like it sweeter, you can always add a bit more of your Umeshu. You could always add a bit less of your whiskey. But me, I think this is a really nice blend for these flavors, and I think I'm going to keep on enjoying it. So I am going to keep on enjoying it, and I'll see you next time. Let's launch it.